You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Weston Williams, joined by Oliver Camacho and Matt Cummings. All right, this week, Susanne Burgess goes inside the huddle. The British-American soprano is about to compete in the quadrathlon, known as the Tales of Hoffman, singing the Four Heroines at Florentine Opera this weekend. Find out how she's training so she doesn't fach up her voice. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, the Met's financial woes are made embarrassingly public, and Timothée Chalamet galvanizes the global performing arts community against him. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, click follow on Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign. You can also stream episodes of OBS every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central at amplisoundsradio.com. Email us your hot takes by writing to mailbag@operaboxscore.com or upload a voice memo using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, you'll get an OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and a #1 OBS fan foam finger, just for sharing your own hot take. And without any further ado, I'm getting Matt just waving me down with a big frown on his face. What's going on, Matt?
I'm afraid I'm going to have to throw a flag on this play, Weston, because it's actually a tetrathlon.
Not a quadrathlon or whatever I said.
You can't mix Greek and Latin roots like that. What are you thinking?
That is true. That is morally unacceptable. Oliver Camacho, do you have anything pedantic to say?
Honestly, Tales of Hoffman is more of a triathlon than a
Oh my God.
quadrathlon.
So we can really come at you both from both directions.
Stella has one line to sing? I don't even know if she has a line to sing. So I guess Stella is more of an acting role than it is a singing role. But tennis is back, baby.
Oh God.
Our long national nightmare is over. R.I.P. Alexander Butterfield.
The Indian Wells Open in California is happening right now. We're, I believe we're in week 2. And it's great because, I don't have to get up super early to watch the matches. Actually, the matches, because it's on California time, usually the good stuff is happening right when I'm getting home from work. So thank you, Indian Wells, even though you have a racist history.
All right, Matt Cummings, do you have anything exciting to say about tennis or, for the love of God, any other sport?
No, I mean, I've been traveling a couple times in the past few weeks, so I feel like my Olympics depression hasn't really set in until tonight. But
Paralympics are happening right now.
That's true. There's still hope yet.
You make a good point.
But then in a week, it'll be...
The depression will be back again.
Let's talk some opera.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
This weekend, if you're listening to the podcast on the day it drops, there's still a chance for you to see one of my top 10 operas of all time. We've never talked about what our top 10s are. We should do an episode about that.
Oh, that's a good idea. Mine's going to be, I'm going to warn you right now, rough for the rest of you.
Stockhausen, Henze, Kranek.
It's just all 7 operas in the Licht cycle. And
Tremonisha.
Tremonisha.
So tomorrow is the prima of the Tales of Hoffman at Florentine Opera, starring Kang Wang in the title role, with Emily Fons as Niklaus, Kyle Albertson as the 4 villains, and our guest today, Susanne Burgess as the 4 heroines, Francesca Miliotto conducting. I heard Susanne sing Norina at Opera Theater St. Louis last year, and we will certainly talk about that. But before we dive into this interview, here's a little bit of Susanne singing the conclusion of the Mad Scene, the Cabaletta, with Naples Philharmonic Orchestra, conducted by George Parodi. My guest today is the star of Florentine Opera's Tales of Hoffman, one of my favorite operas, Susanne Burgess. Welcome to Opera Box Score.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I want the audience to be reminded of when I first heard you, because I did mention this last summer, that I went to Opera Theater of St. Louis, and I was expecting to hear Sydney Mancasola as Norina. And then here you come out, and I was like, who's this? Who's this person? And I was really invested in learning about Sydney because I see that she was singing at Lyric Opera. She was doing Marcellina in Fidelio, and she was doing Melisande in L.A. And I was just like, okay, I want to learn more about her. And then you came out.
I love Sydney. We're
good.
actually really close friends as well.
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, no shade against her, but I was sort of bummed to not get to hear her Norina. But then you come out, and I was really blown away. I mean, you have a bel canto technique, and I know that we all are studying to have a bel canto technique, and that, that is a lot for sometimes the audience to understand what we're talking about, but you actually do it. And your tone is just even top to bottom. It penetrates, it cuts over the orchestra. It's beautifully in tune. It's bright, but it's also warm. So I can imagine so much repertoire for you. But I also feel, of course, but I also feel that you are like this lyric coloratura, and depending on where you are singing, they might give you different assignments. I mean, I see that you've already sung a Lucia in Florida. Is that where that was?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So you can sing a full-on bel canto heroine, but yet at the Met you're singing Frasquita, and yes, it's the highest voice in the whole show. So we need somebody like you who has that distinct tone quality that can just cut through 80 people in the chorus, and Igor Aknachina and whoever, Freddie Di Tommaso, whoever is singing in the ensemble. So it makes sense that they would cast somebody like you in that. So is there a question here? I'm not sure, but yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand what you think your voice type is right now in this stage of your career.
Oh my gosh, what a question. This is actually a question that will also lead so beautifully into the heroines, because I have always been what I would call a fachless soprano. I've sung so many different fachs, and I've always been a bit of a question mark, I think, for teachers and casting directors, because when you have someone like me who can do many things, it's more difficult to sort of categorize, and therefore it's less immediately castable. You think about people who only do Puccini, or people who only do Handel or early music. And then you have someone like me who I've done Lucia, I've done Liu, I've done much heavier roles and much lighter roles, much higher roles. And I can pull them all off, I think, pretty well. So it's always been difficult for me to sort of fach myself, if you will, in terms of marketing. So yeah, it's been a bit of a bane in my early career, but now I think it's turning into a boon a little bit.
From bane to boon. Yeah, well, another thing for people who this is not a video format, you're also, you're a great actress. You were hilarious as Norina, and you fit so well into Sydney's costumes. I assume they had measured her for them. I don't know. But are you 5'10" or something like this?
I am indeed 5'10", on flat feet. And so when you put me in heels, I'm almost always about 6 foot.
Yeah, so that's something else to contend with. I think, I think of Joan Sutherland, Lucia, or Joan Sutherland singing Semiramide with Marilyn Horne, who was like all of, 5 feet tall. But yeah, I wonder if you find any challenges being matched with, tenors.
Oh my goodness. I say this all the time, like, why can't we make tall ones? But now recently, to be honest, we've made a few tall ones, and I'm very happy about that. But that's often a casting concern, especially in these like more sort of juvenile roles. They usually want someone whose stature is a little bit smaller than mine. As I graduate into these more sort of queenly roles, it doesn't matter as much. But certainly for the Ina Ettas of the world, being a sort of cute little package is part of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Norina was, I think, in a way great because you were such a big presence in that show and, so glamorous looking. And I don't know, that space at Opera Theater is sort of strange. So when you come onto the stage, you definitely have a presence and it feels like we're watching opera when you sing.
Thank you. It's true. I mean, I'm trying to lean into the sort of trophy wife of it all. Like being 6 feet and towering over, your partner shouldn't necessarily be a bad thing.
Was that your debut at Opera Theater?
It was. Technically, I was in the studio program in 2020, but it was entirely virtual because of the pandemic. So I'm technically an alumna of the program, but that was the first time I'd ever set foot on the campus.
So you were in the COVID year of Opera Theater. Does that mean you got to do like virtual work with Patricia Rosette and whoever else she had coaching you all?
Yes. Yeah. We did a bunch of master classes and any other class that you could sort of do online. We did those kinds of things.
And can you tell us about your experience singing Norina at Opera Theater and what it was like for you and if you felt like it was the start of this big year? I feel like you're in the middle of a huge year, but I don't know if you sensed it when you were singing Norina.
Honestly, I didn't know what to expect going in because it's always funny when you're replacing someone because you often think sort of like, all right, if that was the original goal, what am I bringing that might be different? So at first I was a little tentative thinking, they're not going to get the same product they expected. But then the feedback from the admin, from my castmates about what I was bringing was so positive and it started to feel like a really shining moment for me. But honestly, it wasn't until opening night. I don't know which night you came. I don't quite remember. But on opening, usually, after Norina's aria, there's like a little bit of applause, but you sort of move forward in the show. It's not a huge show-stopping aria. But this is going to sound a bit big-headed. But after the aria, there was like a dead stop of like 90 full seconds of applause. Which never happens. It was a bit, like you couldn't help but laugh, honestly, just sort of standing there waiting for it to end so we could carry on. And that was sort of the moment that I felt so well received. And then it was, as you said, it was a kind of a springboard for me because everything that's happened since is sort of in reaction to that summer as Norina.
Had you already had the assignment to sing Frasquita at that point?
I think yes. I think that was something I had because the Met relationship was one that I've had for maybe 4 seasons now, and that's been slowly growing, which is great. So that was something because funnily enough, I covered Sydney doing Frasquita the season before. So then I was taking up the mantle of Frasquita the season after. But many, many other things and things which I have coming up in the next couple of seasons.
Which you can't talk about yet.
Stay tuned.
Was Sleepers Awake, which we will talk about shortly, was that part of your pre-Norina contract?
It was it happened in Norina. I remember one day I woke up to an email from my manager that said, Gregory Spears wants to write something for you. And I was flabbergasted. Yeah, because I was like, no, that can't be right. Like I'm not someone who would be on his radar. And it turned out, he'd heard about what I was doing in St. Louis. And also he was following my social media presence where I posted a lot of videos from the Lucia that I did. And apparently he loves what I can do. And so he wanted to write a role for me into this new piece, which was such a starstruck moment for me.
But doesn't that have to go through like Anthony Roth Costanzo or whoever else is making those decisions at Philadelphia? Like who you want to write for? What?
I'm sure. Well, I think they already signed on to do his new piece, whatever it may have been. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm not sure how much. But Michael Eberhard, who is there in artistic, was on the Zoom call that I had with Greg. So I think he was there to sort of, sort of be a purveyor or survey what I was like.
Well, since we're talking about it, I already spoke to Gregory Spears about his incredible year he's having with the Fellow Travelers anniversary and this world premiere. What do you know about Sleepers Awake, and what can you tell the audience so they'll come and check it out in April at Opera Philadelphia?
It's actually very cool. I wasn't able to participate in the workshop because I was doing Silent Night at FGO, but I attended the last 2 days of the workshop just to hear the piece and sort of get into the sound world. And I think Greg would agree that it's very different from anything else that he's written. You know, he's usually writing in this very bel canto, very florid kind of style. And Sleepers Awake, it's almost minimalist. It's almost Philip Glassy in a way. It's got this sort of like repetitive, meditative vibe to it. It's really beautiful, but it's got this sort of almost more of an ambiance than specific vocal lines. So that's been interesting to sort of fit into the ensemble piece in a way.
And it's a very small cast, from my understanding.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a huge chorus. It's like a 60-person chorus. And then there's three principals. It's me, who's singing Thorn Rose, who's basically Sleeping Beauty, the stranger, who's the quote-unquote prince who comes to wake her, and then the court poet, who's sort of a speaker for the town, essentially. And we are combating the traditional fairy tale, which is, you know, like the princess falls asleep, the prince comes and wakes her up. Of course, they're
Without
in love
consent.
and they get married. Exactly. They're immediately in love and they get married and everyone's happy. But like, nobody asked her. Nobody, you know, some guy comes and wakes you up. Do you have to marry him? Do you get to choose? You know?
I was sleeping.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, we look forward to that. Before we talk about Hoffman, which is the main reason why we're speaking today, I did want to just touch base about one more thing I noticed in your CV, that you were at Aix-en-Provence, and you were a studio artist. What do they call it over there? Ensemble artist?
It's the Academy. So
okay.
similar, like an ensemble.
The same springboard from which Jakub Orlinski sprung when he was he was famously in that program, and they had him sing a Vivaldi aria for Radio France, and he was like wearing cargo shorts and like gym shoes and totally didn't understand what the opportunity was, and so he was very underdressed for it, but it ended up being like this viral video of like, here's this hunky guy like dressed like a total bro, like singing Vivaldi as a countertenor, you know, so but
I love that.
I noticed that you sang with Emmanuel Haïm at X, and I'm crazy about historical performance, and I'm crazy about like very stylish historical performance, and Haïm and her band Le Concert d'Astre, I'm in love. Did you gain any sort of, you know, style knowledge from working with her?
Oh my gosh, incredibly so. And it's a funny story with Emmanuel and I. It's because at X, and also, of course, the Concert d'Astre, they do early music almost exclusively, which is something that I've never done. And I don't know that my voice, or I didn't know that my voice would necessarily lend itself to early music in a beautiful way. And so I remember I went into my first, she gave me Cleopatra, one of Cleopatra's arias. And I went into my first rehearsal with her, sort of like under singing and like trying to float and trying to straight tone and do all these things that I thought she would want me to do, you know, to sort of like get ahead of some of the notes I think she would give me. And she stopped me and she was like, stop. No, I gave you this queen. I gave you this powerful, glamorous queen because it suits the way that you sing. So sing the way that you sing this beautiful, powerful queen with your voice. And so she gave me this freedom to sing in early music with, of course, she wrote ornaments for me. She helped me figure out the right vibe for each moment. But she gave me the freedom to sing like myself in a style of music that I never would have thought I would have been able to do. So again, with the whole fachless thing, she sort of helped me feel even more confident.
Yeah, I do think that you can be a bel canto singer and sing Handel as long as you know when not to pour on so much tone. I mean, there's a way to like sing with full-throated tone, but to just, I don't know, speed up the vibrato or just make sure that you're not competing with, you know, other sonorities in the band too much. Like if you have like an oboe playing, like I think in Vadoro Pupille, it's like an oboe and soprano in unison, you know? So we have to be able to hear the oboe. So you have to be a little bit more, I don't know, chaste, but I don't think it needs to be straight tone per se, you know?
Yeah, and this idea of like straight tone and then like adding a little vibrato, we can manipulate the vibrato in a way that's not, choking oneself.
Yeah. Well, so talking about tone quality now, which does lead us to our big topic, which is the three heroines plus Stella, but we call it the four heroines. Stella, who appears in the prologue and epilogue of Hoffman and doesn't really sing much, and then Olympia, which is a clear color to her role. Antonia, which is the full lyric role, like a Mimi would sing. And then you have Giulietta, and there are a couple different versions of Giulietta. It could be sung by a high mezzo, or it could be sung by a coloratura soprano, because there's an aria that's often cut that's a full-on coloratura aria.
Which is crazy. Yeah.
Are you guys doing that aria?
No, we're doing the mezzo version.
Okay. So the mezzo version, I think the big number is, of course, the Barcarolle duet, but also the septet, which is a big sing. It's like concertato deluxe, so how are you feeling going into this and trying to show all of these facets? And are you trying to change your tone quality? Are you trying to change your physical, just, of course, with Olympia, there's very obvious physical things that you do, but what is your approach towards this really big assignment?
Yeah, I mean, so when the maestro, Francesco Miliotto, is the leader of the band here, and he called me and he was like, do you think you're up for giving this a try? Would you try all three? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, because it sort of brings together all the things that I've been saying, which is, like, if you're a full lyric soprano, but you have this really high, clear extension, what do you do with that? Do you just leave it alone? But is that what makes you special? All these kinds of things that I have that I hardly get to capitalize on unless I choose. This was the perfect moment where I didn't necessarily have to choose which show I'm putting on. So, certainly in Olympia, it's about precision. It's definitely about range. You have to have the notes, but the hardest part about it is how precise you have to be. And you don't get to sing into anything, or, there's no luxury in any of the lines. It's very much like pinpricks on notes. And you have to be able to do that out of thin air, kind of. And as you said, physically, it's very rigid. I find it's the hardest act physically because you're holding like this sort of upper body plank for the whole half an hour. And then the way we do it, we go into Giulietta from Olympia, and Antonia is the last act. Okay. So in about I have a 2-minute costume change where I have to take off the whole doll, hair and makeup, everything, and then put on all of the courtesan hair and makeup costume, and then sort of slink my way out in this totally different vibe. Giulietta also has this crazy duet with Hoffman where you basically are just like driving at the upper passaggio for the whole 8-minute duet. And it's very easy to sort of overblow and just like stack your way up. I'm actually surprised so many mezzos do it because it's really hard.
Yeah, it's a throat buster for mezzos, yeah.
And then we have intermission, thankfully. And then I come out as Antonia, who's the sort of like innocent, sweet,
fragile
soprano.
Heroine, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, very fragile, which I find you can do all this beautiful phrasing. You can do some portamenti. You can add in dynamics, which you're not really doing in the previous acts. And that's where my sort of heart music lies, is in Antonia, which is nice. I get to finish with her. But it's a tour de force. It is pretty tough to do all three in one go and feel like you did your best at all times.
Yeah, I can see how it makes better sense to put Antonia in the middle just for the sake of your most beautiful singing is an Antonia, and you can sort of, be a little bit more coarse as Giulietta.
Yes, certainly.
But at least you get an intermission to rest and to take off the courtesan stuff. Yeah.
Definitely. It's funny you say coarse because I totally agree. I was listening to our final room run, which happened day before yesterday. And there's some sort of vocal affects in Giulietta that I'm sort of like, oh boy, it gets almost sort of like villainous in some areas.
For sure.
So it's an interesting shift.
Yeah. Since we spoke about like consent and sleepers awake, do you feel like Hoffman is sort of a misogynist opera and like this fantasy of what women are, like that they're one thing, they're either, just beautiful and, a doll, or that their sex as Giulietta, they are just completely, animal, or that they're like fragile and they need to be, cared for?
I love that you said this because I spoke to our director a long time ago, David Lefkowitz, and I think it is pretty misogynistic because the whole thing is that Hoffman is telling the story from his point of view. So in his point of view, each of these women is sort of singular. She's one thing. That's why Giulietta can't have remorse, because in Hoffman's recollection, she was, just evil, even though that's probably not true. If Giulietta was a full person, if we were seeing her as she is or was, she would have layers. But you sort of have to play this one-dimensional version of a woman because this is Hoffman's perspective. It's his point of view of these women. The only one that I think has some layers is Antonia, because she is innocent and she's fragile, but she makes some choices that sort of go like contrary. She's enticed by the devil in a way. So she has a little bit more choice, but the other ones are very one-dimensional because I think it's Hoffman's version of them.
I love Antonia's music so much, and I love this opera so much. But yeah, definitely Antonia Act is my how do they say it in German? My Kellner Seele, my basement soul music. It's so leading up to the finale of Act 1, of Act 2, or the Antonia Act, we should call it. It is very lyric, but then you have this crazy trio, and I don't want to jinx you, and I'm sure you've already worked out technically what you have to do, but how do you sing this thing? It's so punishing. It's just like higher and higher and higher, and then, here's a D for you.
Oh my God. I know. Honestly, there is no way. It's so funny because I can sing each of these sections alone in a practice room and think like, all right, perfect. That's how I want to do it on stage. But there is almost no way that you get to the end of that trio and think, nailed it. Because like you said, there's so many sections and you're singing constantly. There's no rest. Some of the other characters get to rest while you sing about how you feel about the part that you just sang, It's crazy. And you just go up. There's one part where I will say, here's a little trick. There's one part where you're unison with the voice of the mother that you can kind of tacit a little bit or like sing a little less. I turn up stage a few times to hear her sing, and then I stop singing, and then I turn back forward again.
But don't you have different words than she does in that section?
Technically, yes.
Yeah, okay.
There's a little bit like versus mol or sol, but it's basically the same. But it's really hard. You have to pace. You have to make sure not to breathe so much because I'm physicalizing this idea of running out of breath because that's essentially how she dies, right? She sort of sings herself
to death, yeah.
To death, and you're physicalizing this like weakening of the body. I tend to take many, many little breaths in the physical aspect, and then that ends up stacking vocally. So I have to remind myself that you can act without actually doing.
Yeah, do the opposite. Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like a rite of spring, but for a soprano, just like sing yourself to death.
Yeah, literally.
Well, we only have a few minutes left, but I'd love to hear your impressions of the cast. I mean, I'm crazy about Emily Fons. I don't know anything about Kong Wong.
Oh my gosh.
And I know Francesco, and I should probably have him on the show one day because Francesco is local to Chicago, and he knows that I love him. But I'm curious about Kong Wong and how that's all going.
Oh my gosh, I don't say this lightly. I feel like I've heard a lot of singers, a lot of tenors, and this might be annoying to many of the tenors I've worked with, but Kong is the best. This is the best tenor singing I have maybe ever heard. And I mean ever. Like on all the stages that I have been, he sounds incredible. He has this like amazing old school, dark, super connected, like arpeggio driven tenor voice. It's so thrilling. It's so consistent. I mean, he's really the belle of the ball here, in my opinion, which is a tough pill to swallow, but I'll take it. He's insanely good.
Awesome. And Emily as Niklaus. Emily has just done so. She's doing so much in Chicago all the time, but she's on this new recording of this random Baroque opera seria called Artaserse. And she also sang in Haymarket Opera's Alcina. She sang Bradamante, Ruggiero. She sang Ruggiero. And I've just heard her sing so much coloratura, like fast coloratura, and like perfectly in tune, and then throw out these high notes. And Niklaus is a completely different assignment than that. There's zero coloratura.
Right. It's funny, actually, because, we're so used to hearing the violin aria as a standalone piece in competition and stuff by like a very sort of like thick voice. And hearing Emily do it in context makes so much more sense because she has this sort of like perfect boyish kind of stage presence as Niklaus. And then you come out and sing as the muse, and it's this like enchanting, gorgeous aria. And she does it with a sort of like, instead of like a little bit like a bulldozer, she sings it with this sweetness and this beauty that I think is almost better for what she's saying as the muse, which is like art will always keep you, art will always have you. And it's this like lovely, enticing, beautiful version of the violin aria, as opposed to, this big sort of Mack truck hitting you with art.
Right. Well, if you are listening to this podcast on the day that it drops, Tales of Hoffman in Milwaukee is tomorrow, Friday the 13th, and then Sunday the 15th. I will be there on Friday. Say hi to me. Susanne Burgess, thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you're in the middle of rehearsals right now, but it was great to talk.
It was lovely. No, thank you for having me.
A little bit of Depuis le Jour performed at a concert for Gulf Shore Opera with pianist Michael Fennelly. Once again, Tales of Hoffman is Friday the 13th and Sunday the 15th at Florentine Opera in Milwaukee. If you go on Friday, say hi to me. I will be fangirling. I love this opera so much.
And try to avoid any ladders or black cats when you're there.
But make sure you ask Oliver why he keeps trying to force Charpentier's Louise down our throats.
You will answer for your Louise-related crimes, Oliver. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. Click follow on Apple Podcasts. Hit the plus sign if you have a friend who is interested in opera in the slightest, or maybe even just sports. Show them this podcast. If they're just into sports, they might not like it, but hey, it's one more listen for our little library here. Right now, it's the 2-minute drill.
This just in, the 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Last month, 4-time Oscar-nominated rat boy Timothée Chalamet joined his Interstellar co-star Matthew McConaughey at a public conversation in which the once charmingly androgynous, privileged son of a Broadway dancer said, "I don't want to be working in ballet or opera where it's like, hey, keep this thing alive, even though no one cares about this anymore. All respect to the ballet and opera people out there. I'm taking shots for no reason." The tossed-off line went largely unremarked at the time until a video surfaced of the dismissive comment, drawing immediate backlash from the likes of the Metropolitan Opera, the Boston Ballet, English National Opera, London's Royal Ballet and Opera, Seattle Opera, Doja Cat, The View, Jeopardy, and even the principal of his own performing arts high school, LaGuardia.
Crunching the Numbers, a feature in the New York Times, reveals that despite the Met's significant and highly publicized swings at landing a major capital infusion, its endowment remains depleted and its financial woes have only intensified. After seeking to sell the naming rights to the Opera House, its boxes, and the Chagall murals on its walls, courting an investment from Saudi Arabia, implementing steep salary cuts and layoffs, and renting out the space during dark months, the opera's liquidity remains extremely thin, with more than just investment income being used from its endowment to cover operation costs. Meanwhile, ticket revenues remain anemic for both live and HD productions, and tens of millions of dollars in debt will be coming due in less than a year. With Gelb's retirement looming, the future is far from certain.
It's not all bad news, though. The Met will add a performance of Tristan and Isolde with friend of the show Lisa Davidson and Stuart Skelton, who's replacing Michael Spires as Tristan, on April 4th due to overwhelming demand, with tickets going on sale now and still available as of recording.
In celebration of International Women's Day, conductor Maren Alsop was welcomed to the Kelly Clarkson Show, guest hosted by Pink, to receive a $1,000 donation from Pilot Penn for the Taki Alsop Conducting Fellowship. Over the past 24 years, the fellowship has provided intensive coaching, mentorship, and financial support, now adding $1,000 to that financial support, to women conductors to ensure a more equitable future for classical music through their artistry and advocacy.
In major awards news, the Olivier Awards have announced their 2026 nominations. The only opera category this year is Best New Opera Production, where the majority of the nominees come from the Royal Ballet and Opera. Nominated productions include the Macropolis case Tosca and Die Walküre, as well as Dead Men Walking from erstwhile neighbor and enemy of Arts Council England, English National Opera. The Olivier Awards are on April 12th at Royal Albert Hall in London.
In trade news, major shakeups for two orchestras. The Boston Symphony has abruptly terminated the contract of music director Andris Nelsons, saying that it and the conductor were, quote, not aligned on future vision. In a rare public display, the musicians of the BSO indicated they supported Nelsons and were blindsided by the decision, with reports suggesting they were, quote, angry and shocked by the board's move. Nelsons has been criticized for declining artistic standards at the BSO and being stretched too thin, as he's also head of the Leipzig Gewandhaus Orchestra and guest conducting the Vienna Philharmonic.
Gene Davidson, executive director of the National Symphony Orchestra, is leaving to head the Los Angeles-based Wallace Annenberg Center for the Performing Arts. It's the latest departure from the Kennedy Center since Donald Trump began asserting control over the storied performing arts venue. KC President Rick Grinnell told the AP that Gene Davidson was among those who deserved enormous credit for their efforts.
Domenico Muti, son of conductor Riccardo Muti, has terminated his 3-year contract as advisor to Teatro La Fenice, saying, quote, unfortunately, the climate that has been created does not allow me to continue my work with the necessary composure. Muti explained this in a letter to Nicola Colabianchi, the intendant of the Venice-based house, who appointed Beatrice Venezzi as music director last fall.
Lancaster Opera House has named John Kaczorowski as managing director, a new leadership role supporting operations, production, and development. Kaczorowski brings more than 20 years of experience in education, theater, and creative leadership, with degrees from SUNY Geneseo and graduate work in creative writing and sport management. That's what we like to see.
On the disabled list, Priti Yende has withdrawn from upcoming performances in 2 different productions due to the passing of her father. Nina Mencian will replace her as Norina in Vienna State Opera's Don Pasquale, and Opera Monte Carlo has not yet announced a replacement for their upcoming production of Il Trovatore.
Exit stage right, colleagues and friends are reporting the death of conductor Willie Anthony Waters. Maestro Waters made history as the first African-American artistic director of a major opera company in the United States, Connecticut Opera, where he also served as general director. He made his professional conducting debut with the Utah Symphony and also served as principal conductor of the Florida Grand Opera.
And on this day, March 12th, in 1726, it was the first performance of George Frederick Handel's opera Scipione at the King's Theatre in Haymarket, London. In 1857, Verdi's opera Simone Boccanegra had its premiere in Venice. In 1934 was the first complete performance of Paul Hindemith's symphonic suite, Matthias der Maler, because the Nazis did not want the opera performed. In 1938, speaking of Nazis, Hitler takes Vienna. The Nazis forced exile of various musicians and reduced the Salzburg Festival to mediocrity, the worst thing that happened during the Anschluss. In 1945, World War II continued. The Allies bombed Vienna Opera House. And in 1954, finally some good news, it was the first performance of Arnold Schoenberg's incomplete opera, Moses und Aaron.
Birthdays on this day include English composer Thomas Arne, born in 1710. He wrote Rule Britannia and some operas. In 1819, Swedish mezzo-soprano Henriette Nielsen-Solomon was born in Gothenburg. She was a contemporary of Jenny Lind and was called the Swedish Lark. She was born in 1819. In 1826, German soprano Sofia Cruvelli was born in Bielefeld, and she created the role of Hélène in Verdi's Vespre Sicilienne or Vespri Siciliani. We haven't figured that one out yet.
So much for pedantry.
Yes. In 1863, German tenor Georg Antes, a leading heroic tenor at Dresden Opera, was born. In 1865, it was the birth of Italian tenor Edoardo Garbin, who created the role of Fenton in Verdi's Falstaff, among other operas. German bass baritone Walter Zollmer was born this day. He sang in the premiere of Ethel Smythe's The Wreckers. In 1879, Ukrainian bass Vasily Petrov was born. In 1888, two conductors were born. Hall Johnson, who was also a noted choral composer. He was born in Athens, Georgia. And then on this day in 1888, it was Hans Knappertsbusch's birthday somewhere in Germany. Another German, Helga Pilarczyk, was born this day in 1925. She created roles in operas by Henze and Koenig, operas we've never heard of, except for maybe Weston.
They're all in the top 10.
In 1926, it was Zoltan Keleman's birthday. He was born in Budapest. He sang in the premiere of Die Soldaten by Zimmermann. Welsh soprano Elizabeth Vaughn was born this day in 1937, who created the role of Gail in Icebreak by Michael Tippett, a bop. In 1939, Italian tenor Veriano Lucchetti was born in Tuscany. And happy birthday to French soprano Catherine Dubosc, born this day, March 12th, in 1959.
And that's your 2-minute drill.
Just a little bit of Veriano Lucchetti singing the aria for, what's his name? Adorno? Gabriele Adorno, from Simone Boccanegra. We got 2 in 1 there. That's a live performance from 1978. Sorry for the sound quality. I only know Veriano Lucchetti for being on that fantastic recording of the Requiem, I think with like Leontine Price and Janet Baker. I think that's who's on the... I know it's a good recording.
I think that's like, the Schulte, right?
Yeah, who's this Lucchetti guy? But there he is. Rest in peace.
Lots of reasons to be bummed by the news this week. I mean, we could talk about Timothée Chalamet, and we will, but I think we should probably start with the Met.
Or, as I'm calling it, Metadämmerung.
Truly, this, well, first of all, I want to say it is very likely at the beginning of next month, I will be going to New York City and seeing a performance at the Met. So all of their finances will be saved by my pair of tickets I will be purchasing. But until then, I know things are getting a little bit dire for them. And this article in the New York Times, I believe, really kind of set it all out there in kind of a oof kind of way. You know, it's mostly stuff we knew was going on, but like, oof.
Yeah, I mean, when you write it all out, you may have noticed exactly how dense our write-up in the 2-minute drill was, because there's a lot to cram in there. And that's only about, 30 to 40% of the text of this article, which also includes the usual, throat clearing and rehashing of the debate over the reasons for opera's decline, where the financial squeeze is coming from, since this is truly a problem that's been decades in the making.
I mean, a lot of this is stuff that, like, you know, the seeds were sown many, many years ago. And, you know, Peter Gelb is set to retire in 2030. And I feel like a lot of this financial anxiety might get blamed on him to a certain extent. But a lot of this stuff, you know, is really just kind of a reflection of the industry in general, I think, and how inertia in companies, especially companies the size of the Met, have when they're not really able to be as nimble. I mean, we've said before many times that the companies that weather these kinds of financial storms the best tend to be small. You know, they tend to be more used to having to be a little bit more creative with how they put their seasons out there and how they pay for things.
Which also comes down to, like, how big of risks are they going to take?
Right. Yeah.
Which I want to remember. I want to put a pin in that to talk about when we get to the Chalamet of it all.
And we will get to the Chalamet of it all.
And we
Don't
will.
you worry.
And we will. And like, I think that we here at Opera Box Score seek to be among the first who are doing the preemptive postmortems of the Peter Gelb era at the Met, because you can already kind of see the chess pieces, another pin for later. We'll come back to that as they're falling into place. Like you've got Gelb defenders and you've got Gelb detractors, and the defenders like to talk about things like the fact that tickets are finally on an upswing after the pandemic, about how the average age of patrons has come down by something like 20 years, according to the Met statistics, and how he has been known to, I think the article says, like, find a pot of gold under the rainbow, and is like not afraid to think outside of the box when taking big fundraising swings.
Not worried to overlook certain war crimes to get funding.
I mean, if we're going to make war crimes the part of the rules of engagement, like, I don't know how we're going to stand on our own 2 feet these days. But he does still talk a big game about the Saudi Arabian Winter Festival, though remains to be seen how the unfolding geopolitical crisis that we're all, glued to in real time complicates this.
Especially given that it was all supposed to be, signed, sealed, delivered not too long ago, and is still none of those 3 things as far as we can tell.
Yeah, and like I do think that some of these big undertakings are not detrimental to the brand. Like, you already have a program book that has Rolexes in it 4 or 5 times. So what's really the difference between that and putting a little plaque on a box or putting a little plaque underneath the Chagall murals? Renting out the Met for fashion shows or the Sting musical, where you're tapping into its prestige, and another pin for later, trying to make opera part of the conversation and relevant and part in the cultural eye. Mm-hmm. The live and HD streams, even though they're not doing well right now, those have been a big revenue generator for the company, and they're looking to maybe pivot towards home streaming, which, as we know, people aren't going to movie theaters right now. So home streaming is kind of the name of the game. And all of this boils down to the fact that there are a lot of stakeholders who care about the Met, and also a lot of donors who have been very, very involved in the development of these problems over the last decades, and who continue to be involved, and who do have a say here, even though we like to pin it all on a general director. At the end of the day, the general director doesn't set the terms of engagement with the economy or what's happening in the stock market. We really like to, in classical music kind of in general, ascribe all of this importance to one singular genius figurehead, when really it's a countless amount of people who go in, and their work and their passion and their time and their love for this art form and their labor, who make the Met's productions and about at minimum as, and also run its operations, make it what it is.
Yeah.
And labor, there's no easy solution to the question of putting on an opera is expensive, because you need a lot of experts.
It's always going to be expensive, especially at that scale. The Met is not just an opera company, it's a grand opera company. It is, for now, the largest performing arts organization in the United States because you can't really do smaller scale in that building. You know, it is a huge, even just from a physical perspective, it's a massive space, and you need big productions to really not feel like you're kind of being cheated aesthetically, even, which is kind of was a boon to them back in, the 80s and before, when you were able to just fire off a couple of Wagners and some larger scale Verdi productions and a Strauss or two.
I mean, why do you think they're still doing the Zeffirelli Bohème and Turandot?
Yeah. They're going to do that until the Zeffirelli set collapses into dust, I swear to God. The
article said something about, they haven't been drawing on war horses much. And it's sure, they've been swinging for the fences with some of their programming. And, I think that that's not a content neutral thing. That's a good thing for this art form, for someone to be taking risks. And the thing about cutting corners is that it's often a false economy. You get what you pay for. Take this Tristan set.
A lot of the, things that we'll look at have the certain benefit of hindsight, right? There's no way to predict the pandemic. There was no way to predict that one scammer guy who reneged on his promise to give a couple $1 million. There was no way to predict,
we forgot his name already.
Petras.
Okay. There was no way to predict, the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the problems that would bring when, the darling of the Met is, Anna Netrebko, one of Putin's friends. There's a lot going on that maybe could not have been foreseen in a particularly good way. And a lot of this, looking back at these problems, it's easy to be well, you should have done that. They should have done that.
And this article even says it even goes deeper than that. The way that their endowment has been managed is really being called into question.
Yeah.
It's gotten returns way below the market because I've been watching a lot of industry, so I know that they divested from stocks and invested in hedge funds, which I assume means that Yasmin Karahanani has been on the phone trying to give out insider information by accident. And the board has been on the hook to cover for these expenses, and now they're starting to ask questions what are we getting? And at the same time, you're cutting the administrative labor costs too, not just the artists. And to run an organization of that size and of that scale and of that many moving pieces, you need people who are already taking a big pay cut from what they could be making in other industries to want to be there. And the people who love it most are mostly trying to participate in it, and so they have no money because they're paying everything to yacht fees.
Yeah. It's a real mess. And a lot of this, a lot of this couldn't have been foreseen. A lot of this also reflects the changing culture too. There's less pressure now than when Peter Gelb came in, or rather, less of a sense of civic duty towards the arts among the wealthy donor class than there was, when Peter Gelb started. There is also, I think, a certain sense. One thing that I think I would, push Peter Gelb's legacy on is that he's been very reactive, and I think he's reacted, mostly understandably. But I think the time to make bigger swings was before they had to, right? And I feel I really hope that the Met stays afloat. I hope they can make it through this rough patch. They made it through other rough patches before. But in an era where everything feels like an existential crisis, I think that this is just another one to add to the list. And, we'll see if he can pull through, and we'll see if, his 2030 retirement date is abandoning a sinking ship or hopefully ushering in a better era. We'll see what happens.
It's honestly possible that the 2030 retirement date doesn't end up being 2030. I mean, that's what friend of the show Anne Majette would advise. She gives she's a quote that's really right at the crux of this article, where she says, I think they need to get rid of him and find someone else because they shouldn't be in these kinds of dire straits.
Yeah.
And draining the endowment is not the answer.
Yeah. I mean, once you're out of the endowment, you're out of everything. So, I almost, I mean, this is pure speculation on my part, but they announced his, the extension of his contract to 2030 around the time the Saudi Arabia deal was announced. And then the announcement that that would be the end of his tenure there.
Also very I want to say, also very, very similar to the season 3 finale of Industry. Spoiler alert.
I'm just saying that, when he announced that that would be his last year, that was also the same time as the announcement that the Saudi Arabia deal was having more trouble than expected. So there could be some conditions on that.
What if global superstar and 4-time Oscar nominated Timothée Chalamet had remorse and decided that he needed to do everything he possibly could to bolster the opera community and decided to take on the job himself?
Well, weirdly enough, I feel like he kind of has. This is so funny. If you have somehow not heard what happened with Timothée Chalamet, he made these remarks in an interview, and for whatever reason, the algorithm decided to show it to everybody and their grandma, and everyone is up in arms against Timothée Chalamet, disparaging ballet and opera.
I mean, so we are now at like the discourse about the discourse about the discourse about the discourse about the discourse, and I would love to get us back to first principles here and stake down my claim that Timothée Chalamet is being basket of deplorables. And by that I mean his comments are actually demonstrating the exact opposite of what they are being like interpreted as, and yet the meta story is like taking off with no regard to the context in which we live and which we come before. Remember Brat Summer, everyone? Would that we were in Brat Summer.
something coconut tree. This is I think this is a really fascinating story because, obviously there was obviously the discussion about like, the offense taken. A lot of opera companies really capitalized on it very quickly and very smartly. Peter Gelb, keeping in the moment, there was a little clap back from Metropolitan Opera. I think my favorite one was Seattle Opera creating a discount code Timothy for 14%, referencing his quote that he would only lose 14% of viewers or whatever, or 14 cents.
14 cents is what he said.
For disparaging ballet and opera, which I think is incredibly good marketing.
And this is exactly the pin that I wanted to put in here earlier, because I think the difference between the companies who responded well to this and the ones who put out like focus group pablum was so stark. And what made the difference between the good and the like by the numbers reactions was how specific they were and how like actually funny they were, because the Met response video was just like some B-roll that they've put into 15 different advertisements on PBS this year alone, I guarantee it, with a caption that's like, much love to all the opera, in parentheses, and ballet people out there. And I'm like, who is this for? This is like senators tweeting F-bombs on Twitter. Like, how do you do, fellow kids who's trying to get onto the internet and like utterly failing to capture the moment, like to capture attention in the best opportunity for viral marketing that has presented itself in like literal years for this industry?
Yeah. Oh, and that is not an exaggeration either. The way I was shocked at how this story breached containment, because when I first saw this story, I saw a bunch of, my fellow opera, artist friends sharing it. And I was under the impression that it was completely local to, opera Instagram, opera TikTok, and then I, was scrolling on TikTok and I saw like a mainstream political commentator talking about it. I'm like, oh, we are in a different level of notoriety right now. And in a way, what Timothée Chalamet said, I think, was a bit of a dingus thing to say. But honestly, I am so glad that he said it, because I am legitimately, I've never seen this level of support for ballet and opera in the general public in my life, period. And I don't know what that says about the meta, correctness of what Timothée Chalamet was saying, but certainly this was a massive opportunity, and it was exciting to see opera companies and musicians respond to it in a way that felt relevant and like in the moment.
And like, I want to talk about more about some of those specific responses, but before we do, like, I want to go back to my basket, which is to talk about like what they're discussing in this interview is literally like beat for beat the same as the preamble paragraphs in this New York Times story. It just captured attention in a completely different way. Like, as I was building out this interview, I'm like, these are the same article. They're talking about the same thing, but like from completely different directions. Because he's talking about how like actors and writers and people who love media and care about film and care about television, like all of this is just being consumed by rapacious end stage capitalism, and people are losing out on valuable parts of what it means to be alive and like what makes life worth living, because like tech companies have hijacked their attention spans and all of their money is going towards rent. Like, there is no disposable, like, this is yet again an affordability issue. Can Zoran Mamdani please come on our podcast? Like,
Zoran Mamdani needs to come save opera. And, you know, I really like, you know, we're going over time here. I don't want to like beat a dead horse too much, but I do want to ask you both what your favorite sort of featured responses or references in the culture have been.
I haven't gotten through all of them. There are so many. And actually, it's becoming annoying how many people are trying to pile on, and even, you know, orchestras and conductors who we weren't talking about you know, we were talking about opera and ballet, but yes, you're related, you're adjacent. We talk about orchestras here, but yeah, everybody just wants to be part of this clapback. And yeah, here's what I wanted to say. I'm sorry I'm not answering your question. I have been a huge Timothée Chalamet fan, have been. And ever since
You've cried into more than one fireplace.
Ever since I was first introduced to him in Call Me By Your Name, he became like a very important actor in my media diet. I haven't loved everything that he's done, but he's done a lot that I'm really, really fond of. And I feel like, because I'm going to blame the Academy Awards, because he didn't get an Oscar when he was beaten by, what's his name?
Gary Oldman. For yet another movie about Winston Churchill.
No, but more recently by Adrian Brody.
Oh.
For The Brutalist. If he would have just gotten his Academy Award that time, I think he would go back to being humble. But now he's like become like his character in Marty Supreme, like really unlikable, driven, and without any regard for anybody's feelings. And it's a really ugly look that he's got right now. And I'm not happy with him. But I also think that he must be embarrassed about this. And he had no idea this would get blown out of proportion like this. And he should apologize at this point. He should come out and say something to show remorse for, you know, for what he's done, for what he said. And he hasn't yet. And so who are his PR people? Isn't that what PR teams are for? To like help somebody like him get out of this? It's embarrassing for him. And like, we'll get over this. He'll get over it. He's a great actor, but I think he just lost the Oscar because of this. I think that his campaign was already beginning to flag. He didn't win the SAG award. I think it went to Michael B. Jordan.
The actor award.
Award, yeah. And his momentum is gone now for this. And I think this actually, if voting is still open, this actually probably shot him in the foot. So he's going to be punished for this.
Timothée Chalamet, if you're listening, if you want to come and apologize on Opera Box Score, we do have a little something called the OBS bump that I'm sure can recover your Oscar chances nicely. I mean, you did a movie about ping pong. That's the sports part. It all works out. Let's wrap this show up.
Good call, bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. That's how we end the show around here. Oliver Camacho, let's start with you.
Our dear friend and colleague Ashley Hartgrave was a guest on the vodcast, a video podcast called Have I Got News for Your Ears, hosted by Michael Ian Black. We're going to put a link to that episode in the video slot of the webpage for this episode of Opera Box Score. So go to the website to see it. She was great.
Matt Cummings.
I'm freshly back from my pilgrimage to New York to see my Tristan and Isolde, which is the ABBA and Tim Rice musical Chess, currently in its revival, starring Leah Michelle, Aaron Tveit, and Nicholas Christopher. And honestly, I've already ranted enough on this episode to make you sit here and listen to 5 more minutes that I could talk about doing a Monday evening quarterback for chess. And frankly, it wouldn't be as fun without Ashley Hargrave here. So you are going to hear more about chess in the future. I guarantee it.
Yeah, without Ashley on the podcast, we're not playing chess, we're playing checkers. That's it for this week's edition of America's Talk radio show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Get your voice heard and find links to stuff we've talked about at our website, operaboxscore.com. That's also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Give back to the OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Woodell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho, and your audio editor is me. The executive producer of the OBS is George Cedarquist. For co-host Matt Cummings with guest Susanne Burgess, I'm Weston Williams, asking you to continue the conversation about opera with noted champion of the performing arts, Matthew McConaughey. We're back with an all-new show next week. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more mediocrity. Join us.